Strickland travels the country leading programs in prisons for governments and court systems. In Georgia, he partners with several schools to teach courses aimed at helping students make better choices. But Strickland isn't a teacher. In fact, he is a convicted felon who admits to selling drugs across the country, and it started when he was just 13 years of age.
That's what things look like. When we come out here and we stand in front of our power, when we come out here and we demand justice, when we come out and we take them same laws so that we can't be shot in the streets, so that our families got the same protection as every other family, that's what things look like.
Hey, y'all. First and foremost, I just want to thank you for coming to our show tonight and just being here to support. Before we even start the show, I just want to give a special thanks to Ashley West. And I want to thank her because without her and without the amazing people at Rolling Out Magazine, this wouldn't be possible. So if it wasn't for Munson, if it wasn't for Portia, if it wasn't for Ashley, we wouldn't have this show, which is why it's so important that we as an African Americans and minorities, that we come together and that we use our resources and that we use our tools and talents and that we create stuff that uplifts our community. Nobody's gonna come to us and save us but us. So if we're not willing to do it, nobody else will. So again, I just want to thank the whole Rolling Out family for giving us the opportunity to be able to have this platform, to be able to just bring each other these resources and just to be able to come together as a community and lift each other. But my name is Keith Strickland. I'm the founder and CEO of Making a Transition. Tonight on Change Agents for Social Justice, I want to talk about something that's really dear to my heart. I want to talk about family, the Black family. And I didn't grow up very close to my family, and I'm a father who has a child that passed. And when my child passed, I was incarcerated. So for the little time that my child was on this earth, I was spending my time in jail because I couldn't get my life together. So it's really big to me to see Black families, to be able to see us doing the things that we need to do, to be able to be in a healthy place so that our children can be healthy. So I just want to first and foremost give a shout out to all the amazing parents right now, the parents who are at home teaching your children, because you now are a teacher and a parent and whatever else you got to be over the course of the day. So I just want to let you know that we're proud of you, that we see you, we acknowledge you, and that we lift you every day. And I want to talk about our foster care system. I want to talk about the fact that the African-American culture is the only culture in the United States that has more children represented in foster care than we do in American society. And what I mean by that is if you look at the percentage of all of the children in America, African-American children make up about 14% of all children in America. But when we look at the foster care system, we make up about between 20 to 25% of children in the foster care system. That number goes up and down every year, but it's roughly about that much. Now, if you look at the Asian community, I believe, makes up about 5% of children in America, in the American population. But the Asian children only make up about 1% of children in the foster care system. The same is true with the Latino community, and the same is true even with the white community. If you look at the percentage that they represent in American society, the percentage that their children represent inside of the foster care system is smaller. Now, the reason why that's such a big deal is because children of color have a harder chance of being adopted or placed into a home than any other children, right? And then if we look at males, they have even a harder time. The older a child gets in the foster care system, the harder the opportunity is they're going to be placed, or that they're going to be put into a long-term home. Children who age out of the foster care system, meaning that they never get adopted, those children, 40% of them will either be dead, they'll be in prison, or they'll be addicted to drugs within 3 years of aging out of the foster care system. So when children are never placed, when children never get a home, they have a very hard time in life, a very hard time. So if we're going to talk about being change agents, the first thing we got to change is the world that we're creating for our children. Now, I can go into a lot of different directions from that. I could talk about the poverty to prison pipeline or the school to prison pipeline. I could talk about what we need to do to be able to impact our children while they're in the fundamental years of education, so that way education will have a whole different value system to them. I could talk about the impact that children have by social media, by music, by television, by reality shows. I could talk about a lot of different things. But the first major impact the child is going to have is in their household. And if children are never given a chance to have a home, if children struggle to have a stable home, if children don't have a home that is healthy enough to be able to give them a beautiful view of the world and makes them feel like the world is optimistic and that they can go out and do something and they can have an amazing life, children are going to strive the same way. So that's why I chose for this to be the first thing we talked about. What do we have to do to make sure our children have a basic opportunity at birth to grow up in a healthy and happy environment? So tonight I want to introduce our special guest. Our guest is Miss Clark. Miss Clark is a legal professional that works in custodial and in parenting rights. And what she wants to talk about tonight is she wants to talk to us about some things you may want to think about before you bring a child into the world, what you may want to know before going having a child if you're not in a marriage. And then if you are married and if you are trying to co-parent, some of the things that you need to know while you're co-parenting, some of the things you need to know about your rights if you're co-parenting, and then just what does co-parenting look like? You know, what does healthy co-parenting look like? What does unhealthy co-parenting look like? And if you find yourself in an unhealthy situation, what are some things you can do legally so that you can, you know, change that situation? Again, my goal is for us to look at how do we make the best homes for our children? Because if our children are in a healthy home, like I'm gonna look at me personally, right? I grew up in a home that was violent. I watched my dad beat my mom for years. I grew up in a neighborhood that was a high crime neighborhood, drugs and violence all around us, right? So from birth and as a small child, I was influenced by some very negative things. And then about the age 15, my parents moved out of state and I didn't really live with my parents. I didn't grow up with my parents past that point, right? And I got real heavy into the streets, real heavy into the streets. I started selling drugs and my actions hurt a lot of different families, a lot of different households, and a lot of people suffered because of things that I did, right? But look at how that started with my family. Look at how that started with my community. Look at how that started with the nurture and the nature, right? So maybe I would have been a different person. And maybe some of the homes that I messed up because I brought drugs into those homes, and, you know, I brought violence into that community. Maybe they wouldn't have had some of the impact. Maybe they wouldn't have been impacted by my actions the same way if I had a healthier situation as a child. So again, if we're going to look at changing the Black community, it's got to start with a Black household. Hey, Ms. Carter, are you here with us? You still on mute.
Sorry.
Oh,
yes, I am. Hello, everyone. I am here. And I agree with everything you said. That intro was perfect. That, like you said, it starts in the home. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. The first thing I would mention is, if you can, make sure you think before you have a child. I know a lot of times.
Hey, Ms. Carter, my fault to cut you off, Ms. Carter. Before we get to that part, can we talk a little bit about you? How did you decide, out of all the things you could have done in the world, that you wanted to use your talent and, you know, your degrees and all the different things that you had to go out and help families? What brought you to that point?
I mean, I like to start by saying I am the last of 5. My mom was a single mother. My dad was in prison for 12. I met him when I turned 13. He was in prison for 12 years. So we didn't have a relationship. My mom didn't want to take us to the jail to visit him and things like that. So I didn't know anything about him. When children would say, hey, my dad is coming to pick me up, I didn't even think in my mind like I had a dad or anything like that. So that was probably like, you know, the root of everything. After that, I married my husband, who already had 4 children before me. So I have 4 stepchildren and then 2 biological children. So 6 of us here. And seeing him go through all of his, you know, his issues with the mother of his children, made me really think like, okay, you know what? There's a bigger issue than we think in the Black community when it comes to family and motherhood and fatherhood and things like that. So I started off, I already had 2 biology degrees, and one of them was philosophy. And then what I did was I started thinking like, how can we make this better? I went to grad school, Georgia State, you know, took a few different classes that had nothing to do with my degree. And that's when I kind of fell into like the law. So I took the philosophy of law that I did an undergrad, and then I took my graduate program and said, you know what, I'm gonna figure out how to be a paralegal because I'm really good at this. I started writing. My husband started confiding in me and saying that he wanted to make sure that he had legal rights to all his children and things like that. So we started writing paperwork together. And that's where I kind of found my passion. Like, okay, I need to actually pursue this and help other people because a lot of people don't know these laws. So that's kind of how a lot of that started.
Well, first, man, kudos to your mom, like to raise such a remarkable young lady and somebody who actually wanted to take their own past and personal experiences and make a change. That just says a lot about them, your mother. You know, they say you could tell a lot about a parent by talking to the child, right?
Yes.
So just kudos to her because clearly she had to be a strong woman to be able to make you into the woman that you are, and also to your husband for being able to understand that his queen was his real, right? A lot of men, a lot of times when we go through stuff, we hurt in silence, and when we hurt in silence, we don't allow the people around us to be able to be our strength. We don't allow us to work as a team to be able to create better situations. And because we do that, what ends up happening is that the whole family suffers because the man won't allow the family to be a unit and work together. Now, I understand that as a man, I do. We feel like it's our job to cover and to protect. We feel like when we show weakness that, you know, we make everybody else weak around us because we're supposed to be that strong. But being vulnerable, being honest, and being inclusive is the strongest thing you can ever do. So, you know, I'm just proud of him. And I'm also proud of you because, I mean, I can soak courts across the country. The legal field is not an easy one to get into,
No.
especially when you look at the field that you went into. Like when you're talking about getting into the middle of people's households and families, that's emotional. So you gotta care. You gotta care. I just want to say thank you because only God knows how many families you've helped to create a stronger foundation because you decided to work in your passion. Because I'm sure your testimony gives people the strength and then your skill set gives them the path. So just thank you for that. When I was incarcerated, I was the same way. I wouldn't let my family come see me. And I didn't want other people to serve time because I served time because my actions, my outcome was my outcome. I didn't want other people to have to go through, you know, getting checked and getting frisked and having to go through all the different things and being treated a certain way by guards just because of the life I chose. So I know that's hard, but I can understand again as a man and as a person who's been in that position, why somebody would, you know, would make that choice. Like when my child's mother was pregnant with our child, I never saw her pregnant because I didn't want her to come to a facility, especially as a pregnant mother, and have to go through that stress. I didn't want her to have to see me that way, but I definitely didn't want anybody treating her that way.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why we had to have so much of an understanding before we go into these situations, because there's so much hurt that can revolve around it if you don't. You know what I mean? If you don't think it out, if you don't make a plan, if you don't understand that everybody is going to suffer if you don't do this the right way, man, there's so much hurt that can revolve in a child growing up and hurt. Very rarely is going to be a child that can come out and be healthy and then be a healthy member of society. You know, that saying, hurt people. So when we raise kids in a hurt situation, you know, it's just putting a double negative to it.
That's true.
All right, so you were starting off by saying some opening remarks, and I cut you off, and I apologize about that. But I wanted people to be able to understand who you were, because one of the things I like us to do when we speak on these different topics is to be able to inspire some of the people who are listening and watching, who are trying to find their purpose and find their place in life, to let them know that we're all regular people. We just people who got fed up with something, and we decided to put our time and our energy behind that thing that fed us up. Right. So I want people to know who you are, how you got here, and also how they might be able to reach you if they need your services.
Yeah, definitely. I am really quick. Just to, you mentioned that you can find me on any social media: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can email me. I mean, I'll take emails as well. I have a personal email just for my paralegal, cases and things like that.
Give everybody all your information except for your phone number. That's the one thing we don't want to do. I don't want people calling you at 4:30 in the morning. Like, Miss Carter, they over here trying to take my kids right now. But anything except for the phone number.
I'm gonna say I definitely give that out. Not my phone number because I have 17-month-old twins, and they take a lot of my time. They're both boys. Yes, they in bed now, thank God. But yes.
So let me ask you this before we get into this conversation. As a Black mother of Black males, how do you feel right now just watching society and watching the stuff that's going on?
I mean, I have the worst anxiety. When I tell people that, because even I was a stepmother or a bonus mother before I was a biological mother. So I've been in my stepchildren's lives since they were 1 or 2. You know, they know me as mommy too, you know, so I fear for all of them, and all of them are Black, just like me, you know, and it gives me anxiety that, one, they have to go through this, or we have to go through this, period, as Black people, but they have to go through this. But two, it gives me anxiety because not the proper justice is being taken. At least I'll feel more comfortable if, I mean, I can't even say comfortable, but I would feel better if a crime was had, and then the proper, you know, they took the proper steps to,
Yeah, because then you know that people would think twice before they did it,
before
because
they
they
would
know
do
some
it.
kind of repercussion would come for the actions. But if there's no repercussion,
Exactly.
then it's almost like open season, right?
Yes, exactly how you feel. You know, it brings you to the mindset where, you know, I watch a lot of criminal shows, of course, or I watch a lot of criminal movies, and when the police officers are being trained to come in and like kick in the door or something like that, they always say, you know, watch your back, watch the door that you're next to when you're coming into a home or apartment or something like that, and or put your back to a wall where you can see your full surrounding. What Black people are doing now is we're just kicking in doors in the United States, and we have no wall. We can't stand on the wall and see what's in front of us. We have that anxiety, like someone is always there to out. It feels like someone's always there to get us and things
You
like
know
that.
what,
So,
Carter? I was born into this. Like, what I mean by that is
mm-hmm,
I was born into a low income community in the South, right? So if it
mm-hmm.
wasn't racism, it was police. When I would walk to school as a child, the Red Dog, I don't know if you're familiar with Red Dog. Red Dog was like a special task force we had here in Atlanta. And they were sent into what they call DC 6, which was high drug communities, right? So if it
Okay.
was a high drug community like Campbellton Road, Bankhead, The Bluff, Simpson, those areas,
Mm-hmm.
Red Dog patrolled that, and the Red Dog had like open reign. So I'm saying I'm an elementary, middle school age child. Every single day, Red Dog would jump out on us with 12 gauge, pat us down, search us. No apology, no nothing when they don't find it. But we do this every day. So I became conditioned to know that,
That's
like,
PTSD.
anytime. Yeah. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying that to say that this ain't nothing. I was having a conversation with one of my white friends yesterday, actually, last night. And she's also a attorney. She is a civil rights attorney. And really, she's done some remarkable work. And she's Jewish. So her family went through the Holocaust. So civil rights to her is, you know what I'm saying? Because she knows
Yeah, up there. Yeah.
those rights were taken. So she was talking to me and talking about how she leads a lot of the legal work that's done for some of the larger organizations that you hear about. And
Mm-hmm.
she was talking about how important it is right now for her to use her skill set to fight against Trump, because if he was to win, she doesn't know how she would live the day after. And what I was telling her was that as Black people, we've been living that day after since we were born, right?
Come on.
Like, even
Yep.
though he may be a really hard president to have control to captain the ship ain't never cared for us. You know what I'm
Never.
saying? We've always been at that lowest deck. We've never been in the captain's quarters, or we've never been in the middle class quarters. We've always been in the servant quarters, right? So I was telling her, and this speaks to your anxiety, we've always found a way to make a way. We've always found a way to find joy. We've always found a way to have dignity, and we always found a way to progress no matter what was against us. We come from slaves who, well, let me rephrase that. We come from kings and queens who then fought through slavery, and we've come back to being kings and queens in a country that brought us here to be servants, right? So I'm saying that to say that the same anxiety that they had for us, knowing that their kids had to be born on a plantation, and knowing their kids had to be born through Jim Crow, and knowing that their kids had to be born through the apprenticeship. Now, all of those things, we are this. You know what I'm saying? We've
Yep.
always been
Still
this.
progressing.
So even with the dangers of having a male son or a brother or a husband or anybody that you have to worry about, and I'm not saying that there's not dangers for women, but the numbers and the odds and the violence is much more higher for males than it is for females in our community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that we always progress, no matter what has been against us, no matter what we face, we've always become stronger because of it, and then we turned it around, right? So just as a mother, don't forget that. But back to what we were saying, I would like to, if we could, break this down into different. We have about a good 40 minutes of conversation, right? I would like to break this down into different segments, things that a person should think about before having a child, what they
Yes.
should know about rights in that space, things people should know that once that child is born, like legitimation, things in that space. And then things that people should think about if they're co-parenting. You know, what are some of your rights as a co-parent so that people can see it in different segments? Like they say, the best information is always beforehand so that you make the right decision, knowing all of the facts. So I think that would be a good place to start so that our community can look at some things. Because I think a lot of times people don't understand some of the difficulties you're going to have if you knowingly go into a parenting situation with a person who may not be a full adult themselves, or may not have a life together yet, or may not be, you know, just in that space. And that could be man or woman. Because I know a lot of men who have had children with women who they haven't come into a complete adult mindset yet. And that's very different. And I know a lot of women who are out here busting their butts because they working and trying to be a responsible parent while they child's father is still in the club trying to find the next person who they gonna do the same thing too, right?
Yep, still trying to be right. Yep.
Like, I mean, so does that work for you if we do this in different segments?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I broke it down. So, you know, try to touch a little bit of all three of those, kind of like a sandwich. That's kind of how I built it. But just let's talk about prevention. So that is one of the main issues in the Black community is prevention, right? So a lot of our children don't get the sex talk, or they get the sex talk, but they don't get the relationship talk or the connection with another human being talk, right? So they don't get that until later on, right? 16, 17, 18 years old. By then, some people have already had children or are already pregnant or something like that, right? So that's where we need to start with. Fathers and mothers Black fathers and Black mothers need to stop being afraid to talk to their children early, okay? Talk to your children early. Let them know what happens when you have sex. Let them know what happens when you have children. Let them know about their own bodily functions. Women don't even, young girls don't know about ovaries, don't know about things like that. And if you educate them, that's the issue. If you educate them, then they'll be able to make an educated decision when they get older. So I would start there, talk about that. I talk to my stepson who is 13 all the time about that. It's okay to have urges, but let me tell you what happens later on. Another thing about prevention is when you are dating someone, of course, you're not going to know everything about somebody. You don't know everything about yourself. Okay. So that's just common sense right there. But, watch for the signs, have these conversations early. And I do mean early. Before you think about sex, think about, what if I have a child with this person? Because it's not all bad, but it's not all good either. So you may have a child with someone who has, who is decent, who has common sense. But what if you wanted a family? And that person didn't, have those conversations. Really, like I said, a lot of those issues are education and communication. You have to do that first.
Something I just want to bring up, right, is looking at me, you see a Black male, right?
Yes.
I'm part Creole and I'm part Cuban. You can't look at me and you can't tell that, right? But because I'm part Creole and I'm part Cuban, I have different value systems and different belief systems that most African Americans may not have. So it's like if a woman was to meet me and enjoy having a conversation with me, felt like, oh, he got his life together, he doing something with himself, he look all right, I might go rock with him. You don't know my value systems, you don't know my beliefs. But say you have sex with me that night because you feeling me, and then say you end up getting pregnant, you're gonna have a part Creole and part Cuban child because the child's part mine too. So my value systems and my beliefs have now become part of yours. And you don't even know what those are, right?
Yep.
Like those are some very different belief systems than some African Americans may have. But now you co-parenting with a person who has a total different belief system to you. And this isn't even bringing in the worldviews yet. This isn't even bringing in that we might have two different definitions of success or love or anything. I might want to live in the country and you might want to live in the city. And now I'm like, hey, if I'm paying child support, I'm going to pay half the rent. I'm paying half the rent where I want to stay. And you looking like, this ain't what I wanted. This ain't how I wanted my kids to go to public school. I'm like, well, I don't want my kids to go to public school. I sold crack at public school. You might be like, that was your public school. Now we look at how many, we didn't have none of these conversations. I just thought you was fine. You thought whatever you thought about me. And now, a year later, we got a little bitty crying baby and we arguing because you want to live in the city and I want to live in the country. But we never had these conversations. We just had a couple of drinks and we was like, I can rock with it. Yeah. Exactly. You cute. Yeah, like Like I can rock with you. Oh yeah, you gotta. Oh, that's what you drove. Okay, and then I'm watching you walk off. But none of that was built out of love. None of that was built off of compatibility. None of that was built off of equal values. But we got
Exactly.
a child that we gotta love together when we never even loved each other.
Exactly. Yep. And that brings me to the point of, knowing your place in life. Know if that is even a time for you to even have children. I knew from experience with my father and my mom, her being a single parent, and she figuring out her own feelings, and all my sisters and them having children early and all of that. I knew from a young age I didn't want kids at a young
You know
age.
what? You know what the early. I'm sorry. You know what the age for the average young lady, black young lady, to lose their virginity is now in the United States?
I don't know. Recently, I did know back then it was around 16. I don't know what it
11
is
years
now.
old now. The average age for 11 years old. The average black young lady loses their virginity at the age of 11 now. So I also work with juvenile court on the state level. So I do programs for different juvenile courts throughout the country. But I'm on a committee for juvenile court for the state of Georgia. So I see
Hmm.
the data. I see all the data, right? And it's 11 years old now, between 11 and 13 for the average black young lady to lose their virginity, right? So something else I want to back up on what you were saying about having a conversation.
Hmm.
If you want to avoid having a conversation with your child, the world's going to have that conversation in your place. I
Yes.
lost my virginity when I was 15 years old. I lost my virginity to a grown woman that stripped in a strip club. We used to go to strip clubs and shoot pool and gamble, and because I could
Hmm.
shoot pool really good, the people, the older dudes in my neighborhood,
Hmm.
we were cool with the people that owned the clubs. So they would take us into the club and we would gamble inside the club with grown men. The young ladies would watch us getting money in the club and watching us hustling. At 15 years old, I already had cars, and I was a street person, so I already had certain things. So they saw me as easy prey in a sense. I'm young and I got money and I don't know what to do with it. So different young ladies will be at it. So at 15 years old, I got young ladies who are 10 years older than me, but not only are they 10 years older than me, they've been working in a different kind of environment for
Hmm.
for years.
Yeah.
So think now, I haven't I didn't grow up very close to my family, so I didn't have these conversations. And now I'm having a conversation with somebody who that conversation is a high part of their life, right? So in other
Hmm.
words, it's the old saying, when you don't pray over your children, you leave somebody else to be able to pray on your children, right?
Yep,
So
that's
if you
true.
don't talk to your child and prepare your child, then you leaving your child vulnerable for somebody else's conversation to penetrate your child.
Yep, I agree. And that's why I said that's the first thing that you need to think about when it comes to, because sometimes you can't prevent it, right? Because you didn't get the education. Just like you said, you didn't have the people around you, the mentors around you, the family around you to tell you what was right and wrong. So you have a child young, but you can stop that generational curse. You can stop that, and you can talk to your children early, like I do. But I would definitely start with that, prevention. If you can, don't have it in mind.
I agree. Let's flip over now, if we're still talking
Mhm.
about prevention, to not just the child, but to the young adults, right?
Yes.
Like, let's talk about now for the 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, all the way up, right? The person who
Mhm.
doesn't really understand what you give up of your young adult life when you bring a child into this world. When they
Yeah.
think that it's just, you know, it's just going to be easy. Child support is just going to kick in and life. You get what I'm saying? When they don't really understand what comes, like when we were younger, when we were younger, being a single parent was looked at differently. Like
Hmm.
you knew for one, when a young girl got pregnant, like say we in high school and a young girl get pregnant or whatnot,
Hmm.
truthfully, folks used to talk down on them. They used to talk bad about it.
They were
Like,
shamed.
something like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not, at no means am I saying that anybody should be shamed for bringing a child into this world. So I do want to say this real quick, just to make sure that I'm clear on my position. Having my daughter was the best thing that ever happened to me, the best thing.
Hmm.
Even though she wasn't brought into the world the right way, even though she wasn't here for a very long time period, and even though I didn't even deserve to be her father because I'm still in the street. I was incarcerated when she was born.
Hmm.
She still was the biggest blessing of my life. So in no way am I trying to turn anybody against parenting. If I'm not trying to talk down on anybody who brought in a child
Hmm.
at a young age or who brought into a child without even the other parent even being a part of the picture at all. What I'm saying is let's look at the very best way to
Yes.
parent this child. Let's look at the very best way for you to enjoy the blessing of your child in your life, so that the child's not stress on you and a burden on you, but the child is something that you are so grateful for, because it's the child
Exactly.
brought wholeness and love into your life. So
Yep.
I'm not trying to say, hey, y'all, stop bringing these kids into the world. I'm just trying to say, understand what you're doing when you do it.
Exactly.
Understand that this child is going to need everything out of you. Understand that every day this child is going to have a need. Every day.
Every day. All
Every
day.
day. It ain't exactly. It ain't your life takes a secondary position once that child comes into the world, because you had a chance to live before you brought in a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Once you bring in this responsibility, that is now your life, and whatever is left over is your time. So
Yep.
that's the understanding I want us to have, that the person who you bring this child into the world with, you're going to have to deal with that person for 20 years, the next 20 years.
They get married, but that's going to be more than that, because they get married, you got to go to weddings. You got to go to the grandchildren graduations. That's why I tell people it's not a time frame on this when you'll know this other person. This person's going to be in your life forever.
Yeah. And if that was a person who was nothing like you, if that was a person who y'all didn't click in no kind of way, you're going to have a hard, I got a buddy right now who, you know what, I got so many stories, I don't even know which ones to pull from. I'm just going to say this. Make sure that you have your child with a person who you can be happy with and happy. If you don't feel blessed to be in their company and they don't feel the same way with you, probably don't want to bring a child into this world together. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? If y'all don't have the same views and the same value, and y'all can't work towards things the same way, you need to have a lot of conversations. Children need to be born out of love, but they also need to be born out of logic. They also need to be born with a plan. They also need to be born with a whole lot of reality placed in it. But I don't want to spend too much time on one part of it. Um,
Yes.
so now let's talk about once this child is here. Let's talk about like the stuff people don't know on just bringing a child into the world. Like a lot of people don't know what
I know. I always get that.
That's so funny.
Legitimizing your
Yeah, a lot
child.
of people
He is
don't know
very
what
illegitimate. Yes.
legitimizing a child even means, the value of
Yes.
having your child legitimized, and if your child's not legitimized, what does that take away from you as a parent?
Yes. Okay. So follow me down this journey. You
Okay.
are, if you're the woman, you're 9 months pregnant, and you just went into labor, right? You're getting ready to have the baby. If you are the guy, your woman went into labor. Y'all are going to the hospital. Okay. One thing you need to keep in mind is that everything is contractual. What that means is like everything comes with a contract. Even your birth certificate is a contract, right? It's saying that you live in the United States of America. We're going to issue you a social security number and you agree to be a citizen, right? This is before you can even talk or speak or anything, right? You're going to get this. This is what you're now stamped as United States citizen. Now, when you're having a child, it depends on where you had this child in the United States. If you are below the if you are in the southern states, the Mason-Dixon line, if you're below that line here, we call these mother states, right? Which means once the child is born, this child is now property of the mother, right? The father has absolutely no rights if you're not married. So let's go back to that scenario, right? The baby is now getting ready to be born. You're in labor. You're in the hospital. A lot of stuff is going on. You're cooing over the baby. The baby's beautiful. You can't believe it. This little squishy thing just came out. This is great, right? So now you're kind of blinded by love and everything. You're not really thinking. And I'm gonna split down the scenario. If you are married, right? Let's say we're gonna stick with Georgia, so I can stick with one state.
Okay.
If you're in the state of Georgia and you are married, the mother and the father now have equal rights over this child. Equal rights. So if y'all decided to split tomorrow, then the child can stay with the mom or the dad, and it wouldn't be any type of consequences if it wouldn't be any issue with the law, right? If y'all decide to share the baby, if y'all decide to split. If you are not married, and I need people to really listen to this, if you are in the state of Georgia and you are not married, that baby belongs to the mother. The father has no legal or physical rights. What I mean about legal is that you cannot go to the hospital and request records. You cannot, unenroll or enroll your child in school. You cannot do anything legally. I mean,
You can't
potentially,
even visit the child unless somebody gives you the authorization to visit the
and
child,
get you
even if you
right.
know where the child lives at with the mother.
Yep.
If the mother chooses not to open the door, if the mother, no matter what it is,
You
that's
have no
all
right.
the mother's choice. Yeah.
And in the state of Georgia, right, the rights, I mean, it has to be, the invitation has to be written, it has to be via text, email. It can't just be a phone call, because it has to be something you can prove to the judge. And this is in the state of Georgia. And also what that means is, you, like you said, there's no physical rights, which means I don't care how much child support you pay. I don't care how much the baby looks like you. You have no rights to go and pick this child up.
Can we before we get too far in this conversation, can we talk about legitimizing and what, because that's for us, we know that that's what we're talking about, is the
Yes.
legitimizing process. But for people listening, they don't know that that's what the missing step is. When you're married, you're automatically legitimized at birth. But when you're not married, and I'll let you go into detail in that, because I just want people to understand why this is.
Yes, like I'm from Missouri, so the old joke used to be, your illegitimate kids. Forget them illegitimate kids like that. That used to be the joke, all them children are illegitimate. But what that means is both parents don't have legal rights over this child, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what that means when you're illegitimate. So if you are legitimized, or you're legitimizing your child, that means that you have legal rights, right? Legal rights over your child. So if you're married and you have said child, you're automatically legitimized.
Mm-hmm.
You have no issues. You don't have to go to court and fight anybody over that. You have those rights
And
from
the
birth.
funniest thing is if and I'm sorry, just
No, go ahead.
let's say that a mother was impregnated by somebody outside of that father, that husband, that husband
Mm-hmm.
is still legitimized to that child because they're married.
Yes. And
So
that's in every
that's just
state
the
in the
funny
United
part.
States.
Yeah, and that's
Yep.
something that's how deep legitimization goes, and people really don't know that. If you are married and your spouse cheated on you, became pregnant, had a child, that child now is still your responsibility because
Yep.
that
And
mother.
you still have to pay child support. They still
Mm-hmm,
can take you to court. And
mm-hmm.
that's what people fail to realize. Like, if you are married and your woman steps out on you and have, like you said, have a child, then that child is still your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go
But
to court and fight.
that's how deep the legal rights to being a
Yes.
parent is. Now let's talk about what would, because in some states you can sign the birth certificate and you can
Yes.
legitimize at birth. In other states, if you're not married, you cannot do that. In
Yep.
some states, if you're not married, you have to go through a whole process of becoming legitimized. And
Yes.
can we go into details on what that would look like?
Yes. So, like you said, in some states, like for example, in South Carolina, you can, and in Georgia, you can have a baby, and you can ask to sign the birth certificate, right? So the difference between Georgia is, even if you sign the birth certificate, you still have no legal rights. They can automatically put you on child support, yes, because that means that you have signed acknowledgement of paternity. So what acknowledgement of paternity means is, you're saying that I'm acknowledging that I am the father of this child, right? A mother doesn't have to, of course, because it came out of you. But the father, you have to sign that. Acknowledgement of paternity in South Carolina means that you have rights. Acknowledgement of paternity in Georgia means no, you don't. And this is why you need to know your state rights, because one thing to keep in mind, um, legality and like child support and things like that is state driven.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is your state has control on how you get to take care of your child, how you get to pay for your child, how you get to enroll your child in school. That's the state. It's not federal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those things are separate. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. But to kind of sum all that up, when we're talking about that in the state of Georgia, if you are in a hospital, your baby comes out and you sign the birth certificate, great. You're now responsible for child support, but you still have no legal rights. You still have to go to the court and you have to petition for your rights. That's where the legitimizing comes from. Petition. You have to ask for rights of your child, legal and physical.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I do want to mention is that child support and custody is separate.
Yeah.
People always put them together, and they're not together. They are completely separate.
Yeah, it's older woman broke it down to me like this. It's the difference between rights and responsibilities. Like, you have responsibilities regardless, but you only have rights when granted. So just because you have a responsibility to take care of something doesn't even mean you have a right to what you have to take care of. And that's a very hard reality. And that's a reality a lot of people got to understand too. When you're talking about bringing a child into this world, if you're bringing a child into a world with into the world with somebody who may not be happy with you, you may go through a whole lot to be able to get the rights to love your child, even though you have a responsibility to take care of your child.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was crazy because I was just watching a short YouTube documentary about maybe about last week about how a lot of domestic violence have come from that notion. Having children by someone you know for a fact y'all can't communicate. Y'all can't agree on anything. A lot of domestic violence have come from that. And that even murder has risen because of child support claims. And to me, that is crazy. You know, I also looked at just those different statistics and share a few of those, you know, like women child support and things like that, because people think women can't get on child support, but that's risen 6% over the last 5 years. So that's, you know, we'll get to that later, but exactly. That is one thing to keep in mind when you have a child in the state of Georgia. The woman has the rights of the child unless y'all are married, and then you'll have to fight for your rights, which can take a very long time.
A very long time. And it can be extremely expensive. Extremely.
Yes.
I watched a friend of mine who, oh man, his child's mother lived with him from when the child was born, and then she was later caught cheating with somebody in their home. And he left the home and let her keep that home and move, but he was the breadwinner of the home. So when he moved, it still changed her lifestyle. So because it changed her lifestyle, this child had been with him for years and years and years. When he moved, he didn't know that, you know, that he wasn't gonna be able to see the child anymore. So she kept the child away from him. She put the child into a different school, and he still had to pay child support. He still had to pay to maintain the household, but he didn't see his child for I want to say it was almost 5 years until she let him see the child again. And he spent well over $200,000 on attorneys and on court fees. And again, she was the one who was found cheating with somebody in their home. But because, you know, he didn't legitimize when the child was born because they lived together. He didn't know about the whole process. They were at the hospital together. He signed the birth certificate. I'm not sure if he signed the birth certificate, but I know that they left together from the hospital. I was at the hospital when the baby was born.
Yeah.
And, you know, and what you don't know, but what you don't know can tremendously hurt you. So for a father who's bringing a child into the world, what would you tell them when it comes to legitimizing? And also, I'm gonna speak from a man's point of view because I'm a man. Most of the stories I've heard of gonna be from a man's point of view. But also, as a mother, is there anything that a mother should be cautious of letting the father legitimize if he may not be the best person? You know, because once you let him legitimize, if he has certain things in his lifestyle, if he is, you know, say in the street, so he's doing certain stuff that you don't want your baby around, or if he maybe has been violent to you in the past and you know that he got some dangerous tendencies, should you make the process of him legitimizing go through the court process and make him, you know, take those extra steps so that way you know that there's some protection there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would say the statement that comes to mind is ignorance is bliss. You know, you feel more comfortable when you don't know things. Sometimes you want to you don't want to dive into that. But just like prenuptial conversations you have before you get married, you need to have those same conversations with the mother of your child as a male, the mother of your child before your child comes. You need to say, hey, I want to be on a birth certificate. I want this child to have my last name. I want to take responsibility. You want, because like your friend, because they lived together and because they had a decent relationship before, you know, the baby came and everything like that. He didn't think that she was going to cheat on him. He didn't think he had to go to court and do all this, you know, pay over $200,000 in legal fees and stuff like that just to get probably every other weekend or something like that, you know, like.
And then the funny thing is, after he got it, she still violated. But what a lot of people don't know is judges, unless there's a physical threat to a child, very rarely act on an order of a violation of a mother because the mother is the paternal parent. So even after you spent this money, even after she was evicted from a home, child had nowhere to live, the whole nine, it's still, you know, and I don't want to keep speaking just from a man's point of view because truth be told, black men, and I'm saying this, I'm speaking to all of us right now, We got to do a better job at taking care of our children. We got to do a better job at taking care of the women who are bringing our children into the world. I've had so many men tell me the child is my responsibility, but not the mother. Are you a fool? How is your child going to be healthy and happy and whole if they living in a household with a mother that's struggling? How is your child going to grow up healthy if they living in a home that doesn't have utilities and food? How is your child going to be optimistic and see life as a beautiful thing if they living inside of a home with a mother who's struggling to find a beauty in life because you put her in a position where she can't take care of herself because she's trying to do this on her own? So I'm saying this first and foremost, men, I do want to stand up for our rights, but I also want to stand up for the fact that you need to be a man. If you bring a child into this world, regardless if it was a mistake, regardless if you don't even know her like that, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Children who do not have a father in the home are 20 times more likely to run away from home.
Exactly.
It hurts them when you're not there. It hurts them. But
Exactly.
I don't want to stop the conversation we having, but I just want to say, black men, I'm standing up for our rights, but be a man. Don't be a black boy.
Exactly.
Be a man.
Exactly. And know exactly, like you said, how it's affecting the child. But
And if we gonna have this conversation, also, women, be a woman. Don't just sleep with somebody and bring a child into the world by them. Unless you were raped, you are
I
partially
didn't threaten them.
responsible for everything that man does. Because your poor choice and your poor decision, which believe me, I done been a young dude that done ran game before. It's hard to know who you dealing with. But let the facts tell you who you dealing with, not the words coming out their mouth. A man will tell you anything to get some. And I'm sorry, I'm just being 100 with you. A man will tell you anything. Let his actions over time, show you who he is. Actions don't lie, words can. Words can easily. But okay, I don't want to take up too much of our time. We've gone through the I'm gonna leave that alone. We've gone through legitimizing. We've gone through and bringing children into the world. But let's now talk about this child is here.
Yes.
And there's friction. Now there's problems. Now what do we do from here?
Yes. So one thing I did want to mention, because you said it earlier, is the woman. Do you want the man to be legitimized? Like what can come of this, right? So it depends on which state you're in. I keep mentioning that because different states, like I say, your state controls your rights. Yes. So that's one thing to keep in mind. May not be the same in Georgia as it is in Virginia and things like that. But one thing one thing you need to realize is once that last name is on a birth certificate, they have a financial responsibility to take care of your child, right? Financial responsibility to take care of your child, right? That's one thing to keep in mind. But in certain states, now, like I mentioned, Virginia, if that person signs some type of affidavit or acknowledgement of paternity, it splits. It's saying that I'm acknowledging that I am the father of this child, I am the mother of this child. So that means that y'all now have equal rights, which means you cannot withhold your child in the state of Virginia from the father because he didn't give you $25 for Pampers. I'm sorry. Right. So if he goes to court and said that you withheld his child, then they can find you in violation or some type of contempt or something like that, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. But we'll stick with the state of Georgia, which means in the state of Georgia, if you allow the father to sign the birth certificate and to sign the acknowledgement of paternity, they are financially responsible, but it does not give them any type of legal rights. Okay, so really you don't have anything to worry about if they turn out crazy or on drugs or something like that, and you don't want them to be a part of the child's life, then in Georgia, if you're a woman, you're fine. But if you're a man, you're in trouble. Okay.
So we down to about the last 12 minutes, right? Real quickly, if a man wanted to legitimize in Georgia, what does he need to do?
So this will be so really quick, I'll give you a few steps. One, figure out if you can afford a lawyer, right? Or some type of legal aid, some type of legal help. If you are on Medicaid or if you're on any type of government assistance like TANF, SSI or anything like that, it's something called legal aid or legal aid of Atlanta or legal aid of Conyers or legal aid of wherever you're at. You can call that number. It should be on the government assistance website, or it should be on any paperwork that says you have government assistance. You should be able to call that number and ask for legal aid. Legal aid should be able to help you figure out your what you're trying to do. If you want, joint custody, full custody, or, sole custody, things like that. They'll also be able to represent you for a discounted price. Yes, that's it. That's if you have money. If you don't have money, they do have programs. One program I want people to keep in mind is, and I know this is very matriarchy, I like to say, because they don't have any other names for it, but it's called Fatherhood Program, right? If you need to find your fatherhood program in your state, go to fatherhood.gov and then put in your zip code and they'll find the one that's in your state, or the one that's closest to you. Those programs can also help you with some type of legal aid or help you with the paperwork. All the paperwork you need is online. When my husband first filed for custody of his youngest son before our sons, we did everything ourselves. We literally did all the paperwork ourselves. It's not easy, but if you sit there and you read and you fill in the blanks on some of those forms, you can file for yourself. Keep in mind it comes with a fee, anywhere from $150 to $250. Depends on what state you're in. You pay
So
that.
and just a thought for all of the young people out here having children, even from the beginning of it, it's not just understand that there's adult responsibilities like that from the jump. And if you don't get that, I mean, you can lose. It's a lot of people who didn't grow up with their father in their home or their father in their life, where the father really wanted to be in your life, but because the father didn't know about these steps, they couldn't be there.
So they had no idea. I think about my own father, who to this day tells me all the time, like, you know, I wanted to be more in y'all lives, you know, but your mom was so stuck on child support that, you know, she took y'all away. She moved y'all to Atlanta. And, you know, she knew I was a felon. She knew I was in jail for 13 years for selling drugs and being a drug lord. She knew I couldn't step over a state line. So she knew to put me on child support and leave. And, you know, I was, for all of my years, you know, when I was younger, I would be so upset with my father. But I got older and I started getting upset with my mother. I was like, hold on, because it was both of their responsibilities. You had a child with this, you had 2 children with this man. You knew he went to jail for 13 years. You also knew if you left state lines that he wouldn't be able to follow us. He wouldn't be able to physically see us. And you failed to send us back to Missouri enough to build a relationship with him. We didn't have Facebook at the time. We didn't have all of this FaceTiming and all of that stuff. We didn't have that. So that's one thing to keep in mind, young people, that although we like to blame the fathers all the time because they left, we need to also look at the mothers and say, what was your responsibility? You know,
and even the responsibility of, and not speaking on your household, but man, I can't even start to tell you how many women dealt with me because I was in the streets. Like, it was the thrill of dating a guy who sold drugs, not knowing what comes with this. Like, come on, man. Like, I got buddies I got a child myself who's no longer here, right? Because of my actions. I got friends whose children were kidnapped and their parents were kidnapped. Whole families damaged because of the lifestyle we live. But you chasing us because we're getting money. It's a lot more out here than just getting money. And a person that's getting money today don't mean they're gonna be getting it by the time your child's even born, or by the time your child starting school, or by the time your child may, God forbid, need some kind of serious, you know, thing, medical condition, or things that come up. Just because somebody makes street money today does not mean that they're gonna be able to provide for a household in the future.
It's not guaranteed.
And the truth be told, it's a very hard transition for a lot of people making it out the streets to be able to survive in a regular society. Like, it's a very hard transition. So when you choose that person to be somebody you bring into the child into the world with, you're taking a huge risk. But speaking of that, now we're talking about once this child's in the world.
Yeah.
What are some of the rights you have once the child's in the world? What are some of the responsibilities you have once the child's in the world legally?
Yes. One thing I want to mention really quick is child support, right? People say, you know, I don't believe in putting any children in the system, period, right? So I don't believe in CPS. I don't believe in a child support system. I believe in supporting the child, but not child support, because I'm on the other end. I can see what's going on. I know the legal ramifications on that, and I know how much the state gets and their fees and everything. One thing I do want to mention to our young men and women, because one thing I want to say is I am, like I said, I'm number 5. I'm the youngest, but I'm number 4 of the girls. I have an older brother who's about 40 by now, but all my sisters are on child support, all of them. So that's one thing I want to keep in mind. It ain't all about men, it's women too. But one thing I want to mention about child support is, if you know the other person is getting ready to put you on child support, man, most likely it's the woman, go put yourself on child support. Let me tell you why. Because what she's going to do, because she's going to find the cheapest way to put you on child support, she's going to go down to the child support office or DFCS or some type of office like that. She's going to pay $20 to $25 to put you on child support, right? You're going to have to pay that $25 back after they do a DNA test. If you go the right route and pay $150 and go to Superior Court and file to put yourself on child support so you can get legitimized at the same time, you're going to file to be legitimized, which means you want legal rights to your child and you want to pay child support. They will allow you to set up your own bank account. Listen to what I'm saying. A joint bank account for your child mother and yourself, which means you can do what? You can view what they're spending the money on. You can control what day you put the money in. You now have financial control of your own life. If you allow that person to go down to the state, DCFS or whatever it's called, to put you on child support for $25, that's why it's cheaper. To put you on child support, you're now agreeing contractual. That's why I say everything's under contracts. You're now agreeing to pay a certain amount of fees every year. You're now agreeing to pay to a certain year, a certain date. Your child want to go to college? Okay, now you're paying to 21 to 22 years old. You thought child support was done at 18. No. Now your child support will be automatically adjusted through the state. You have no control over your financial life once you allow that person to go down there and put you on that. Put
And
yourself.
also, it's something that you said, and I didn't mean to cut you off. It's something you said also that's critical. People don't understand. If you get put on child support, you have no way of complaining on what that money spent on unless you can find illegal activity. If you can find some kind of illegal activity, then you can go down, you can complain about that. But unless you can find something where they're completely violating for 10,
Yep.
15, 20 years, you have no say so. But like you
Yep.
said, if you had a joint bank account, then you can look at where is that money going. And if you do need to go back and make an adjustment, you can show that the money was being spent improperly. You can show that you did your part and this person didn't do theirs because you can show the track record of the money. It's not just you sending a check in, it's you being able to monitor. That's a huge difference.
Huge difference. You have control now. Yes. And that's one thing you want to keep in mind is a lot of people lose their mind over child support, or they lose relationships, even with their own children. They won't even speak to their children because they're mad that the mother put them on child support or however it may be. And but if you control it from the beginning, this person don't like you. You got 1,000 text messages where they say they hate you and they're putting you on child support. Go put yourself on child support. Because another thing about that is you can take yourself off of child support. Y'all can agree. Y'all can go in front of that superior court and judge and say, hey, we're done with child support. Done that day because you're controlling it. You get off of child support in the state of Georgia, you're going to at least pay child support for 6 more months, at least, because the paperwork takes it's snail mail. It's going to take so long to get you off. You're paying additional 6 months. You think
for
that
the mothers,
that person,
whoever the parental parent, the parent that the child lives with, just something also because they got to see the benefit on both sides.
Yeah.
When you allow them to put themselves on child support, you get the full amount of that child support. So it's not the fees. So if they send in a check for $100, you're not going to get $100 if you put them on child support. If you allow them to put themselves on child support, exactly. And if you allow, and don't let the fees get behind and then it becomes compounded, you're going to see even less when they make a behind payment. But if you allow them to put themselves on child support, when they put $100 into the account, you got the $100. So it's got to be able to benefit on both sides for people to agree to it. I just want to make sure we show both sides of it. Like it's not when you put the state in the middle of your situation, you're gonna pay fees and fines, and you're gonna have somebody else who's governing the way your child is taken care of on both ends.
Exactly. And then the custodial parent who is receiving the child support, keep in mind, if you ever seek out any government assistance, they're taking a portion of your child support. If you need Medicaid, right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of people are on unemployment, and a lot of people are on Medicaid, and a lot of people are on things like that, TANF, and all types of, whatever government assistance it is. They're taking a percentage. If you're on TANF, which is cash assistance, they're taking most of your child support, up to 60%. So keep that in mind that
and that's only if you allow them to put you on child support. That's what we're saying about the difference. Now we're down to the last 2 minutes. I want to tell people also, we're doing this as a 2-part show. The reason why we didn't take any comments on this show is because I wanted to give Ms. Carter an opportunity to be able to give a full overview of what the parenting system would look like, some things to think about and some things to do if you're already in this. Clearly, we didn't get all the way through it. But if you guys want to ask any questions, you can leave those comments inside of the box, the comment box on Facebook, or you can email us. Just go to makingatransition.org and go to our contact page, and you can send emails so that way we can already have those questions lined up. Or for next week, just feel free to comment. We didn't take comments this week because, again, we just want to give her an opportunity to give a full overview of this, but we will speak more in detail next week. Ms. Carter, do you want to close out and say anything? We're down to the last 1 minute, but if any closing statements, closing thoughts or anything like that.
I would definitely say, think twice before making any type of decisions when it comes to having children or child support or anything like that. Because like I said, everything is a contract. keep in mind on that. And if y'all need to reach me, I'll also share my information so you can get this out to everyone. But Instagram is Kias, KIAS_philosophy. And then Facebook is CC Bullock. You should be able to find me on either one of those. You can also email me. I'll give you my email address, and you can, if somebody asks for it. In case you have any questions, I do free consultation for the state of Georgia. And then I'll be happy to, help anyone through who has any questions about how they can get something started.
Okay, can you do your Facebook and your Instagram one more time for just anybody who didn't catch it?
Yeah, so my Instagram is KIAS, which is Kias, like the car, _philosophy. And then my Facebook is CC Bullock, BULLOCK. So feel free to send me a message, however, and I'll be happy to do free consultations and help anyone who's trying to start legitimizing or trying to start some type of child support, either for themselves or get off of child support, because I can also talk to you about that as well.
Okay, and for anybody watching right now, I just want to say, going back to the foster care system, we have the highest amount of children in the foster care system in state care and who do not have somebody providing a future or preparing a future for them. Nobody helping to condition them so that they can be ready to become an adult. Nobody teaching them some of the things like what we talked about and all the other life lessons that a child needs to be able to go out in the world and thrive. We as a Black community, we have got to come together and we have got to take care of all of the children in the Black community, not just the children in your family or your household, but we got to look at the whole community. Is our responsibility, is our children. Like, our children need us. They need us to create better homes. They need us to fight on their behalf so that they can have more rights. They need us to make a place for them in American society so that they can thrive. But they also need us to be responsible adults before we bring them into the world, while they're in the world, and, just while they're inside our homes. And that's something that, it's easier said than done. It's hard to break cycles. It's hard to change your mindset. It's hard to take in all this new information. But if we're going to look at changing the Black community and uplifting the Black community, it's got to start with the children first. Like, it's hard to have a healthy society when you got children who aren't brought into the world the right way. But y'all have a wonderful evening. We appreciate you. You'll see Ms. Carter again next week. And we'll look forward to getting some more of your knowledge and wisdom and dropping those jewels, okay?
All right. See y'all next week.
Have a wonderful